All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Rick Rice. I am the Director of Software and Support at Media Services. All right, so for those of you who haven't used MediaWeb previously, MediaWeb is a secure online application accessed through your browser. I'm using Firefox today, and we're starting at our login screen. When you first log in, it's going to give you a list of all the shows that you have access to. I'm going to access our demo show here and go into the application, and this brings us to our starting dashboard screen. Across the top of the screen, you're going to see the drop-down menu items that access the different modules, reports, and functions of the system. I'm going to start today in our user maintenance screen. So as an accountant, you have the ability to grant or deny privileges to all areas of the system for anybody who's using the software. As you can see here, all the modules are listed where you can give view, edit, or delete privileges to everybody who's using the software. You can also grant and restrict access to various reports, importing, exporting, setup items, on-location paycheck printing, etc. MediaWeb allows you to set up as many companies as you need within the system as well, and you can grant users access to one or more companies. The Productions tab gives you the ability to give users access to one or more productions or episode codes. This is really helpful because we have a lot of clients that use the software to track a ton of small projects. So if you don't want to have a different database or a different setup for each one of your projects if they're under a certain budget level, you might want to run several of them through one database within MediaWeb. And so in here, if you have multiple projects going on, you can give the user access to individual production numbers, and then throughout the system, they can only generate reports and only code to the items they have access to. So when you first start a new show with Media Services, our support team is going to help you out. They're going to get you all set up in the very beginning. We're going to find out what is your chart of account structure. Are you using production numbers, set codes? How do you use free fields, etc.? We're going to have a conversation with you to find out how is your software, or how do you need it set up for you. We're going to assist you with importing your budget, and importing the budget will automatically create all of the cost accounts within the system. The program will automatically assign ranges that can be expanded. And our support team is also going to help you out getting your balance sheet accounts entered into the system. So we'll work with you to find out what are your ranges, how your account's going to be set up, and we'll walk you through the whole process. So one of the first areas I wanted to spotlight in the system is our budgeting module. So the budgeting module that you're seeing on the screen here is one that we're going to be releasing in just a couple of weeks now. It's been developed, it's in beta, and it's a new screen that we find has a lot of the flexibility and functionality that users have requested over the years. What you're seeing is a budget for the sample I put together, location 1, production 1001. It's going to look very similar to a cost report, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. You've got all of the standard cost report columns, as well as the different flavors that you might want to have where you can see your remaining % of your budget, your period variance, your EFC reasons, if you're using overages, etc. If you want to change the actuals that are appearing on the screen, it's as simple as just hitting the drop down and say, I want to see the actuals for a different production number or a different location or period or etc. And what that will do is keep the budget and the EFC numbers that you already have in the system and bring in the new set of actuals. If you want to combine the actuals and purchase orders across a series or a number of locations or productions, you can simply click on the Consolidate Actuals button like I just did, and you've got your list of locations, productions, companies, etc. And you can apply those changes so that your budget updates and kind of becomes a living experience for you. It's like running your cost report several different ways. And then if you don't want to save it, you can simply hit the cancel button, and none of the changes, none of the things that you brought in will save to the budget. We try to give you as much functionality on this one screen as possible so that you don't have to leave it to go do other things. For example, you can see here on this account 1001, we have a list of how much money we have in purchase orders, how much we have in actuals. By hitting the little expander here, we call this a nested grid, you can see a listing of all of the items that make up those numbers, all the purchase orders, APs, journal entries, etc. And it gives you all the transaction information so that you can review it. If you also have a new account that you need to add in, we do give the ability to just add an account on the fly. As you're typing in accounts, it will automatically tell you what range the account belongs in. So that way, as you proceed, it knows if you have what the parent account is, what the account type is, and will automatically add it to your chart of accounts. Some of the other functionalities that you're probably familiar with, you can be in add mode or replace mode as you're typing in information in. You can lock your budget, make it your default budget, etc. I have a question that came in. Do we constantly update the budget versus showbiz budgeting? So MediaWeb and showbiz budgeting are two completely different applications. So no, changes that we make in the one aren't necessarily in the other. Our showbiz budgeting application is a standalone program that you install on your computer. And so an update actually requires you to download and install a new version. The nice thing about MediaWeb here, being a browser-based system, is that if we need to do an update, like if there's a critical patch or a critical request that comes in, we can actually make an update almost immediately, updating the system, and all you have to do is refresh your page to see the changes. So good question, but no, these systems are handled by two different development teams, and they are two different applications. All right, so one of the next areas that I wanted to spotlight here is the purchase card screen, because this has grown in increasing popularity in recent years as we find a shift in the industry moving away from petty cash and moving towards purchase cards. So our purchase card module for quite some time has been able to import transactions from Cache, from PEX, directly into the system via an export from their website. However, we have made recent updates to our system here to allow you to paste in information from virtually any purchase card or any credit card company for that matter. If you can get the information into Excel, I'm going to bring up an example here of this is some information, purchase information that was exported from a site. It's pretty generic. It basically mimics what your screen looks like. And all I'm going to do is just copy the information on the Excel spreadsheet here, come back to my purchase card screen. I'm just going to hit Control V. I'm on a Windows machine here, and it pastes the information right in. So you can see how fast it is. It automatically links up in the system all of the location codes, production codes, episode codes, etc. So that way you can get a large amount of information into the system very quickly. You'll notice the top line is the offset line is blank. Inside the vendor maintenance area, we do still have a spot for you to plug in what the vendor's purchase card offset account will be so that you have consistency when you're selecting vendors. So you can either type the name or press the space bar to get a list. As you select the name, the system automatically reads the account number in the vendor maintenance area and will populate it for you automatically on the offset road. The system will also indicate for you if there are any missing accounts or maybe accounts that didn't match up. Maybe something in the Excel file had a typo, or maybe an account doesn't exist in the system that needs to be added in. So you can simply come in here, you can just start typing what the correct information is, and then you've got your transaction that you can save. Also, within all of our entry screens, you have an attach area where you can attach files. So we have a secure online storage facility where you can attach W-9s to vendors, you can attach pictures and images and PDFs to purchase orders. Anything you can think of, you can attach to the transaction within the system and retrieve later on. So we do have a secure repository for you to use. So this is an example of the new purchase card screen. I'm going to bring you now into our AP entry screen, activities, kind of the meat and potatoes of the system is under the activities menu. This is where you do most of your day-to-day transactional work. And I'm not going to go through every single module today. I'm definitely going to be doing some additional follow-up tasks or webinars in the future to go over things. Sorry, I have another question that just came in. Question about using MediaWeb in order to use purchase cards in purchase cards or showbiz budgeting. The showbiz budgeting application does have a whole different set of importing than the MediaWeb accounting software. Again, it's two different teams. One of them is a browser system. One of them is a local system. So the MediaWeb software functionality that we have in here is not related to showbiz. We do actually have a whole series of videos on what the Showbiz budgeting program capabilities are and all of the different import and export capabilities within the system. Okay, so in our AP entry screen here, all of our entry screens, you're going to notice a certain theme look very similar so that you have very little startup information. You don't have to learn a lot about the software. We try to make the screens intuitive and consistent so you can easily find your way around. The top left corner of each screen is your searching area. So I'm in the AP module. I can search for posted or unposted AP invoices. Below that, I've got a tree view. So I'm going to see a listing of all the transactions that have been entered in the system. Simply clicking on a transaction brings it into the program. The top part is what we call the header information, all pretty self-explanatory. The bottom part is the detail, where you've got a grid that you can enter in as many detail lines as you need. One question came in about creating a movie magic file, the job cost actual bill for export to Showbiz. So in our MediaWeb commercial application, we do have the ability to export actuals into a file that will go into Showbiz budgeting. The commercial system is very similar to this. This one is just for the feature TV environment, so this one does not have the Showbiz budgeting export for actuals. Generally, we find if you're going to be using MediaWeb to do your accounting, you're going to be using that in lieu of the Showbiz budgeting program. Showbiz budgeting, very popular today. Okay, as you're entering in AP invoices, you're going to choose the different check types that you can have for each individual AP. By default, it's computer check on this particular show, at least. The system will allow you to print checks. We do pre-printed and maker check printing. You can keep track of manual checks, separate checks. We do have a couple of additional payment options as well that you would set up within your bank. So I'm going to go over here to our bank setup area, and I'm going to access my favorite bank of media here, go into our interface area. And aside from Positive Pay, we do have the ability to do bill pay with City National Bank. We have currently set up a link with them. So if you have an account with City National, as you post checks, it sends information to City National Bank and they can do bill payment on your behalf. Same thing with a company called Invoice Pay that we work with, where they can actually pay via check or wire. So with the growing popularity of, especially in the past couple of weeks, people working remotely or from home and not in production offices, one of the other needs that's come up fairly recently is the ability to pay via ACH payment. So that's where you would be paying a vendor. We'd get the vendor's account number and routing number information and pay directly to the bank or send information to the bank to pay to the vendor. This is something we are currently working on. We have it targeted for Q2 of this year to be released. And this is basically very similar. Once you post a check transaction, it sends the information to the bank. The bank then would pay the list of individuals that you have in the file. There is a fee the bank charges for all of these. Banks do charge for the bill pay. The invoice pay company also has their own fee. And of course, ACH is within the bank. I had a question regarding integration with banks in South Africa. Currently, the only bank that we have set up for bill pay is City National Bank and Invoice Pay. However, one nice thing about the ACH process that we're building, it uses something called the NACHA file. The NACHA file format is kind of a bank industry standard. So any bank that can receive NACHA files to do bill payment can automatically pay for you, and we can send to that bank. So there will be a bit of a setup within the system. So depending on the bank that you're working with, we will send the file directly to them, and then they can make the payment from there. So if your bank can receive a NACHA file, then the process that we're working on should be able to move forward. And the person who asked that question, I would like to follow up with you later on to find out what other needs you would have as well, and how we can kind of prepare as we're building this to work with your bank. Okay. One of the screen I wanted to go into is our new journal entry module. So the new journal entry module you're seeing on the screen here is actually being released next week. This is going to replace our existing journal entry screen that currently imports Excel files. When you import an Excel file, sometimes the columns don't always line up properly. Sometimes you've got issues with special characters during an import process and compatibility with files. So we're employing the same thing in our journal entry module that we did in the purchase card. And just to give you an additional functionality that you can use with this, our journal entry module can import in just like I showed you on the purchase card, where you paste data directly into the grid. But it doesn't have to be complete information. This is really helpful for accountants wanting to receive lists of petty cash items from their crew members. So if you have a crew member that knows a list of all the dollars they spent and the description of what they spent, they might not necessarily know the accounting coding, and you might not necessarily want them to do the accounting coding. So you can have as little information as just the dollar amount and the description, like you see on the screen here. I'm simply going to copy that information, come into the journal entry module, paste it in, and you can see it just created all those detail lines where it pasted in all the dollar amounts, all the descriptions, and now you as the accountant can come through and just code it out as you need. You can also do that in the Excel file, or you can pass out a sample of the Excel file that has all of the columns. We make it really simple, so you simply have to click on this Excel button here on the bottom, or the Excel icon, and that creates an Excel file that matches what you had on your screen. So you can see here it's got all of your columns, so you can tell your crew or whoever you're giving this to populate the columns with the information, and then that can be imported directly into the system. So one nice thing about a browser system is that we can add all of these functionalities. We can build all of this in and make changes as users request. So one of the other modules that I wanted to spotlight here is one very near and dear to our heart. That is the payroll screen. So in our payroll module here, we have recently made some additions where it brings in the standard payroll information you're used to, your account coding, your dollar amounts, your earnings, your fringes, who the individuals are, etc. On top of that, we're actually now bringing in for your earnings information, your hours worked, rate of pay, days worked, check number. For your fringes, we're breaking out all of your taxes. So you can have your FICA, Medicare, even your handling fee. So all fringes are now being broken out in the software as well. This isn't a new feature that we've recently added into our system. It's technically in beta, but if you request it, we can turn it on for you. Currently, the export out of our payroll system looks like this, where you have all of your account information. You can assign your fringe accounts. You can tell us if you want certain fringes going to specific account numbers or free fields. But now we've set it up so that you can actually import the additional information into the software as well. And yes, of course, we do have a report that goes along with that. So I'm bringing up a payroll details report here. This shows you an example of data where you can have posted and unposted or combined data together. We summarize all of your earnings and fringe data, but you can easily expand your columns to see all the different earnings types, your straight time, overtime, gold time, etc., and your fringes. You expand that out and you can see all the different fringes and all the different taxes for each individual. And just like the other screen, if you hit Excel, you can export all the information out into a nice clean grid. Anywhere you see these little filter icons on the top, this is where you can actually filter data, where you'll get specific lists pertaining to the data that's on the screen. You can filter for whatever you're looking for, and then export out just what you have pre-filtered on the screen, or dump the whole thing into Excel and play with it there. So this is kind of the direction MediaWeb is going, where we're making everything available to you in a nice formatted grid that's easy to filter and easy to export out so that you can work with. Next, I'm going to go into, I'm just going to show you the list of all the reports that we have in the system. MediaWeb has been around since 2010, so for 10 years now. And we've added a lot of reports over time. We've made a lot of changes, made a lot of enhancements. And recently, there aren't many requests that we get that we haven't already built into the system. We're still thinking of new things to give you and new ways to give it to you, extra details you might want. But in general, all of your reports have been built into the system that that have been requested to us. I'm going to show you an example of the cost report. Seems to be everybody's favorite. I'm just going to filter here for a particular location, a particular production number. If you've got multiple companies, you can select which company. If you've got multiple currencies, you can consolidate information together. So pretty standard cost report behavior. And then all reports in the screen automatically come up as a PDF. PDFs are great, as you all know, because you can easily save them, email them, and they're easy to search and navigate. So this is our standard cost report in PDF. All reports can be exported into PDF, Excel, or Word. We have another format we recently created called Excel RAW, which basically takes off all the extra header information, so it kind of just pushes the data out to Excel and makes it a little cleaner, so that way if you don't need to see all the filter parameters like the report runtime, etc., then you've got the data in a nice, easy to use format. One of the other reports that we added sometime last year is the multi-show GL. So under General Ledger here, I'm going to multi-show. Now it says multi-show beta, but it's not in beta mode. It is live and available for you to use. The reason we called it beta is because it's fairly new out there, and we're still adding to it and tweaking it, modifying it. But this is an extremely powerful report because it aggregates all of your financial data, all of your General Ledger data across all shows you have access to. So if you remember in the beginning, I have a list about 4 different shows there. And it's aggregating the data for all shows, but I can still narrow down in my filtering here for 1 or more shows, companies, currencies, locations. It gives you all the chart of accounts in the entire system that you can filter as well. And yes, of course, this can be exported out to Excel very easily. Also, in the next version, you're going to be able to create templates where if you've got certain templates, certain reports you run month by month, you can save these and easily retrieve them for use later on. This is a really powerful report. This is one of those ones that really kind of put media services on the map because it is difficult to aggregate data across multiple databases, multiple projects. And this report did it pretty quickly, as you saw. And you can see it's for all source codes and all General Ledger transactions. Now, we do have some clients that have hundreds of shows with us. And so this report can get to be several million lines, which nobody really wants to filter through. So we do have a kind of a benchmark. Once the system sees that you've reached over 100,000 lines, it's going to say, hey, do you want to pre-filter this before putting it on the screen? Because there are some browsers that struggle more than others with that volume of data. So we try to be smart and make it a report that is actually useful to you as you're working with it. All right. That was kind of the end of the Spotlight features. A lot of the items we will be happy to let you explore on your own with the use of the demo data. You can feel free to reach out to our sales team. We'll be happy to give you access to the demo where you can go in and play around, enter transactions, do whatever you like. We do have, of course, within the system, the year-end functionality where you can do 1099s out of the system, and that same General Ledger feature where you aggregate data across multiple shows, our 1099 system automatically aggregates it together. I do have a question that just came in about how can I print location checks if you're using MIC or check printing? It's a very good question. So when you are using MIC or checks, for those of you not familiar with MIC or check printing, what that is you basically load blank check stock into your printer. So it's kind of like a white piece of paper with the blue coloring on the bottom. That's it. And then if you're working on different shows, whatever show that you're in, the system, MediaWeb, will automatically print the MIC code on the bottom, your production company name in the upper left corner, and then all of the other check number, check lines, other information that you need on the check, and then the stub information. But the question came in, what if you have location checks you need to print? We've actually handled that in a pretty cool way. So the system already knows what bank you're using. It already knows that you're using MIC or checks. So you can simply state you want to have 10 checks available. Actually, just to make it easier for the purpose of a demo, I'll just say 2 checks. On location that you want to print, you have a starting check number, and you say print. The check comes up as a PDF that you can easily print onto your check stock. And it gives you your MIC code where you've got your check number, your routing number, your company information. And when you actually print this on your pre-printed form, the bottom area will be blue and the top area will be white. Yes, we do handle multiple formats. You can have check stub stub, you can have the large stub in the check, you can have stub check stub. So there's a lot of different check stock formats out there. We do accommodate all the ones that have been used in our industry. And this is where you can actually print it, a blank check. You can have the selected number of signature lines print, and then you can give it to whoever's on location. They can fill out the check. Later on, when you come back in and you are entering the AP invoice that corresponds with the check, you can enter it as a manual check. You'll plug in this check number, and it automatically links the fact that the blank MICR check is now attached to this AP, so that on your check register you can see that they were all accounted for. So, great question. Somebody asked, is it possible to handle multiple currencies? Yes, absolutely. So, for example, here on your cost report, when you're running your cost report, you can say you want the report, whatever your selection to be in your currency that you've selected. I also have Canadian currency on here. So the report can be run in Canadian currency or US currency, and I can select how I want it to be converted. So if I say I want Canadian currency, but I want to have my US converted to Canadian, it'll do the conversion. Or if I want to combine US and Canadian together and consolidate that, it will consolidate the information into the selected currency. So great question. Yes, we do handle multiple currency on reporting and in your entry screens. As you're entering in your transactions, you'll notice that the first thing that it asks you on the top of the screen is which currency you're entering the transaction in. So as you post it, it will post it into the appropriate currency. Great question. I'm sorry, you're asking about multiple countries. The system doesn't necessarily track as country. So if you are a production office, then within the company setup area, you're going to set up whatever country you are in for your particular production. I'm just reading the question here a little more specifically. Possible to handle 2 different countries for reporting. So the production office is the only thing where you really specify the country. The currency is attached to the country, so when you're generating the report, that's where it would be converting it for that country's currency. And yeah, again, I'd like to speak with you after the presentation because I'd like to get some more information about the ACH and the multiple country currency questions you have as well. I have another budgeting question. Are we able to import Movie Magic budget files into the system? So yes, we can import from Movie Magic. Actually, in Movie Magic, there is an export called Media Services. And when you export to that format, it imports directly into Media Services. And of course, we import from our own Showbiz budgeting program into the system as well. We are working on a way to import in from an Excel file. That is something that's currently in the project window that's coming up this year. One other question about on-location paycheck printing. Yes, that is very popular right now. With everything going on, with production offices closing down and productions working from home, yes, MediaWeb handles all of our on-location paycheck printing for our payroll department. So what will happen is our payroll department will finalize an invoice and send the files to MediaWeb. You then log into MediaWeb and you will download. Actually, I'm going to switch into another show here that actually has some checks loaded so you can see what that looks like. So I'm switching over here to my other demo show. I'm going to my on-location paycheck printing, and this is what it looks like. You basically download your check files, you have your payroll file that automatically loads into the system, and all of your reports that you can then print. So on-location paycheck printing is absolutely something we've had in the system for a very long time, and works really well.